Welcome everyone to today's panel discussion on the future of building surveying. My name is Aaliyah Pollock and I work at the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, also known as RICS. For those of you who are not aware, we are a global professional body that helps to advance knowledge and set standards in surveying. With over 150 years of history, we support more than 130 members in managing land, real estate, construction and infrastructure. We cover all asset types across the entire property lifecycle, highlighting the broad canvas of areas that we focus on. And within RICS, I personally work within the thought leadership team, where I analyse the impacts of AI, data, and technology on the built and natural environments. And as part of this, I manage the RICS Tech Partner Programme, a collaborative platform that aims to bridge the gap between the surveying profession and tech innovators to ultimately drive progress within the industry. Though not a chartered surveyor myself, I do have a background within geospatial science, with experience doing this in both the military and construction sectors, which has given me insights into how these fields intersect with building surveying. Now, I'm looking forward to hosting this panel and discussing how emerging technologies like drones and digital data are shaping the future of building surveying. So without further ado, let's introduce our panelists. And Ian, you're first on my screen, so feel free to start.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Ian. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Surventrix. I've been involved in that business for the past 2 years. Before that, and alongside that, I run a SME UK-based central region surveying practice called Carpenter Surveyors. I've run that business for about 12 years. I've been an RICS chartered surveyor, registered valuer, RICS registered expert witness for about 25 years. So been in the industry for quite some time. Also a member of the Expert Witness Institute and the RPSA. Involved in the RICS Home Survey Standards launch back in November 2019 and sat on various working groups. I do some assessments for RICS in terms of associate RICS assessments, and before that, ATC assessor role as well. My background today is to talk about digital solutions in terms of Surventrix and what we've been doing to help that move along.
Thank you, Ian. Adam, I'll move across to you.
to myself. I'm Adam Bailey. I'm the Director of EK Specialist Surveys, who are part of the L. Kendrick Group. We're a multidisciplinary firm of chartered surveyors, engineers and designers providing national services from our offices in London, the North, Midlands, West and South Coast of England. Within specialist surveys, we've been providing drone surveys since 2013, and we're in fact first to market back then. And we've seen the development of the use of drones and other technology within the built environment mature and grow throughout that period. We have added services as we've grown, from drones to thermal imaging, looking at building performance, to leak tracing using non-destructive techniques, and the use of software in delivering those services.
Thank you, Adam. Matt?
Yeah, thanks for everyone for being here. So my name's Matt. I am the founder and CEO of PropDoc and DroneDoc. We are a digital surveying outfit based in the Middle East, headquartered in Dubai. So we digitize the built environment from both internal captures and external captures, whether it be from the ground or from the air using drones. About myself, I'm a chartered surveyor by background, worked in valuations. I'm also an RICS registered valuer. And in a previous life, I was an architect, which feels like a long time ago, but quite a technical background, and now leading the digital revolution for the Middle East.
Thanks, Matt. And last but not least, Rhodri.
My name's Rhodri. I'm an associate RICS and RICS registered valuer. I'm currently a director for Scafol. I've been in that position for the last 12 months or so, but prior to that, I was heavily involved over the last 4 years over the development of it. And Scafol's a digital surveying solution for firms similar to Ian and Surventrix in regards to how we can help, a firm run their business, complete site notes and so on and so forth, which obviously we'll discuss in this kind of forum. Bit of history about myself. prior to being in surveying, I was actually a professional rugby player, but my body's too small and frail to continue doing that when I'm 40. I moved across into the property industry, working for large companies like Countrywide, where I learnt the ropes, have extensive experience in property management, as well as completing residential home surveys and red book valuations, which led me into the kind of position I am now, developing software to help be compliant but remaining efficient in those kind of areas.
Thanks, Rhodri. It sounds like a bit of a career change, but
Bit of a sideways step.
Thanks everyone for joining us today, and I'm really I'm really excited to kick this discussion off. So let's start. As we all know, digital surveying is at the forefront of this transformation, and it's offering innovative tools that not only enhance our accuracy but also streamline our workflows. From LiDAR to drones and even thermal imaging, there's so much we can do now that wasn't possible before. Now, I want to break this down a little bit and highlight on one key word there, which is digital surveying. So, Matt, I'll start off with you on this question, if that's okay. How would you define the term digital surveying, and what are the key differences between traditional methods and modern methods?
Yeah, so I think it's important to identify the evolution of digital surveying from where it started, even before that. So traditional methods were using a measuring tape, a pen and paper on site for a measurement survey. We then progressed to what we would call a disto laser pen and paper, where you still really have to draw the floor plan of the property, and it does come with its issues. Land surveys are typically done with total stations in the modern day, but now, as you touched on, we have LiDAR scanners, GPS, combined with really sophisticated software. So it's moved leaps and bounds. The issues with traditional methods is pretty much human error, where, for example, you miss a measurement on site, you then have to go back to site, and even worse, incorrect drawings would be produced, which then you'd have to go back to site again, redo the survey. It's a timely and costly exercise. Also, manual drafting from paper drawing was an issue. I know because I've done it myself in the past many times. With modern methods of digital surveying, you can think of it like photocopying a building. So LiDAR uses lasers to collect huge amounts of data by just walking through a space with a handheld scanner or a tripod-based scanner, or from a drone. You're picking up a huge amount of data very fast, and then you can convert this data into 2D and 3D assets, whether it's as-built drawings, 3D BIM models. But it becomes a lot faster, so on-site surveys are much faster. You're reducing human error, ability to model faster into BIM more accurately, and the data can then also be used for audits much later on. So you know when it's been captured, so it is a time-stamped data set. And following all of that would be downstream applications such as digital twin integration. There is a lot more that can be done with a simple capture.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Adam, I'll move across to you. I know you would like to ask a question there, but touching on this point, Matt's mentioned some uses of LiDAR. What emerging technologies within your work with drones and thermal surveys are having the most impact on your work?
I just wanted to layer on what Matt was saying and just get his opinion as well, that digital surveying isn't just about the 3D world. We're talking about digitally surveying the built environment. So we can use 2D solutions within that digital format. So, when we're capturing imagery using drones or, infrared imagery with thermal cameras, we're not necessarily creating a measured or 3D representation of that real world. We're also creating a record of an existing asset, not necessarily in 2D, but in 3D, but in 2D as well. And it's enabling those records to be referred to and digested off-site as well as on-site live and post, and that stakeholders can integrate with it more deeply, but also in a much user-friendly way. Do you agree with that, Matt, or do you see it mainly within the 3D space?
I think 2D assets are great because they can be extracted from a 3D scan, because we live in the 3D world and people outside of our industry aren't really familiar with 2D drawings. They still get a bit confused from time to time. Even back in the day when I was working in architecture, you show someone who's not familiar with a floor plan or a reflecting ceiling plan, they're not entirely sure how to envision the space. So when we talk about it from someone who's not in the industry, I think 3D is a lot more easy to digest, but I totally agree that in the industry, 2D assets are very important to surveyors, architects, engineers, and so on.
So in that space of digital surveying, it's dependent on who's consuming the data as much as who's using the data as to, whether that's 3D or 2D, and the value is based in the data itself and the way you're using it. So especially in a geospatial area, those 3D assets can make a difference, but we still need digital assets which are 2D for the professionals to use in the correct way, especially if it's quick, easy to capture and then promulgate to the stakeholders.
And looking at this digital data capture from a different perspective, Ian, how would you say that emerging technologies like cloud-based systems and digital data capture are changing the way surveying firms operate?
Yeah, lots of ways, I guess. If I put a residential surveying hat on, I think more and more businesses in general are thinking about ESG requirements anyway. So moving towards cloud-based technologies, thinking about carbon footprint, impact on the environment, I think there's a natural sea change towards moving digital anyway. Obviously, cloud-based technologies are part of that solution. And I think when we consider really, most people these days want digital, they want things quicker, they want things paperless. What we've got to sort of look at, and everything we sort of look to innovate really, is how we deliver something digitally, paperless, but to enhance that surveyor as a tool set really. We talked just now about how things have changed in terms of that on-site data capture. I remember when I first qualified, it used to be a survey text pad, as they were called, developed, and they're still around, which was an A4 pad, and you'd flip it around, you'd fill it in, and you'd be entirely paper-based. Fast forward to today, we don't use paper. So I think in terms of that adoption of going paperless and going cloud-based, I think we have to look at the wider functions of what businesses do to understand how we facilitate it. So that really for me is looking at a whole business solution that starts with the customer journey. So it's how you engage with the clients up front, whether that's dealing with proposals, your CRM tools. That's how you deal with compliance, how you deal with file storage, how you do your on-site digital data capture. All of those things link into a cloud-based solution. And that's ultimately, I think, what all of the solutions, whether we're talking about drone photogrammetry, LiDAR, they're all linking back to a cloud-based support system. So I think the other aspect is businesses now are looking more and more towards it to reduce costs. Gone are the days of needing multiple systems to do certain tasks. It's all about having a single ecosystem to bring all of that together. It's allowing you to collaborate with team members, remote work from home. There's so many benefits to working digitally and cloud-based that we just didn't have. I think it's been around for the last several years, but in the last decade, that pace of change and adoption has really come about. And I can only see that getting quicker and more efficient and cheaper to do for firms all across the world, really, as we go forward.
Thanks, Ian. And Rhodri, I'll move across to you. Given your experience of both being a tech innovator and being boots on the ground as a building surveyor, what would you say are the most significant digital tools or methods that are currently shaping the future of building surveying?
It's just similarly echoing what Ian just said. It's that kind of cloud-based solution. That you look at Apple Mac these days, who lead innovation in just technology and as a whole. One of the advantages I get from Apple Mac is I've got an iPad, I've got an iPhone, an iPad, MacBook, all those simple things like Handover. I can paste copy documents on one and paste it onto the other. So as a surveyor, having that ability to have everything all in one place across multiple devices. You can log in on your phone and complete a survey, and then you can come back to the office and you can have that survey on your computer. You can, answer a phone call from a client saying you did a survey 3 months ago and you said this. As a surveyor, you might complete, 100, 200, 300 surveys a year. To remember everyone specifically by detail at the drop of a hat is a task in itself. But if you've got that ability just to jump on a device, quickly refresh yourself with some imagery and answer that question, it kind of almost revolutionizes the service you can provide to your clients. And that's the ongoing service as on top of the actual survey itself. And then you couple that with the way that it's not just the innovation of individual tech, it's how you can integrate the technologies together. So, we'll probably talk extensively about drones. I love a drone. I've got a drone, not particularly good at flying a drone, but I do enjoy them. But how you can seamlessly integrate that into a cloud-based solution or a on-site capture software program to enable you as a surveyor to complete your job more diligently, but without meaning you're on site for another half an hour, 45 minutes, or you don't ruin the flow of your inspection. So I think it's having that cloud-based facility where you have everything all at a fingertip, but also how you can integrate multiple technologies. I saw, we talk about drones a lot, but I saw a guy had a little mini tank and he puts it in a subfloor void and he just drives it around the subfloor void and he can see all the kind of timbers and damp-proof courses and all the issues and stuff under there. Whereas the old days, you might get a surveyor that would lift a floorboard and stick his head down and see that kind of 1 meter vicinity. But now you can go down and you can capture greater detail. Just having that ability to integrate all these different technologies to provide a much better service, I think, is probably the most transformative way in which a surveyor needs to start forward thinking.
Thanks, Rhodri. Ian?
Yeah, just good points there. I think just another point to mention really in terms of how cloud-based, going back to the sort of question of cloud-based technology, how that can support. I think the other thing we'll probably talk about this as well is compliance. So if you think of an average UK-based SME, file retention, we have to retain files for 15 years. You've got liability to consider over a period of several years. And cloud-based solutions are a fundamental part of that now. As I say, that's really something that we'll drill into later on, I'm sure. But I think it's something that if you're not using cloud-based technology in some form, you really ought to be doing so. Thinking about startups and students, etc. Again, probably something we'll touch on. But yeah, I think compliance and regulation are important things to consider and how that delivers. Audit trails, things like that. It's all part and parcel of that ecosystem as well.
Thanks, Ian. Adam?
Yeah, just again layering on that, digital surveying. Ian's talking about cloud-based systems and Rhodri's talked about some physical solutions. Digital surveying is that ecosystem of software and hardware, and where the technologies are open up opportunities to have supply chains delivery within the built environment and within surveying itself that can be end-to-end and can be continuously reviewed and updated and brought in line with regulations, as well as what is physically going on in these spaces as well. So, as we see with the development of drones, we've seen over the last 12 years, the advancement in the technology has been immense. And we're talking about the platforms themselves that are becoming more capable, the batteries that can fly longer, the sensors, whether that's, cameras or infrared sensors, they're becoming better and always more accessible, because as the technology moves forward, obviously it becomes slightly cheaper, and over time that just the ability of the platforms against the cost makes it more achievable for everyone. And then you have the software that backs that up, and using cloud-based systems, you've got the storage ability and the ability to expand that storage so you can meet those regulatory requirements in terms of long-term holding onto the data, but also being able to review that. I mean, that's what's really making the difference, is those advancements in both the platforms and the equipment's ability, but also for storage and delivery capability to really meet the needs of what we need in the built environment now.
Thanks, Adam. We'll move across on some points you just mentioned there, Ian, on this topic of compliance and regulation. So as new technologies become part of surveying, staying on top of regulations is key. Drones, for example, have specific rules on where you can fly them and how they can be used. Digital data collection also brings privacy and data concerns. While traditional methods don't have the same level of regulatory focus, today's tools require surveyors to be more aware of legal requirements. So I think it's important for us to explore what these regulations are and how firms can remain compliant while adopting these technologies. And Matt, I'll start off with you. With the increase in use of technologies like drones, in your experience, what regulations should surveyors be aware of today?
Yeah, it's a big talking point right now, and it does differ country to country, region to region. I can talk to my region in the UAE and the Middle East. There are different applications for drones, so I think that's really important to say. So surveying is one, aerial delivery services starting to become a real thing. Military is another. I can speak more towards the surveying and mapping, where in this part of the world, you require aviation authority approval, MOD, Ministry of Defense approval, because you are operating drones in their airspace. And the airspace will become busier, not as busy as the roads, but air traffic will become a thing in the future. It is a highly regulated industry for that reason. So we need flight permits in order to operate a drone. And you also there needs to be an MOD officer present with us in this part of the world. So apart from the MOD officer being on site, you also need to be licensed. You need to have the correct paperwork on site. There are so many rules and regulations that are changing. It is not an easy world to operate in, frankly. That's why you need to consult someone or an outfit that is a professional drone service provider, because just popping up a drone by yourself, the recreational user, it's becoming a gray area. It's becoming an issue that you might not even be aware of the rules and regulations because they do change so often. So yeah, to conclude, I would say surveyors should be consulting certified drone service providers.
Thanks, Matt. And Adam, coming from a UK perspective, I know you've got experience working with sensitive and urban environments. Looking at this, what would you say are some of the key regulatory challenges you've found when operating in this space?
Yeah, I mean, as Matt said, it depends on region to region because the use of drones is really part of aviation as much as it is part of the industries that it's serving. So it's with reference to what those regional aviation authorities direct how that's done. Yeah, I can speak mainly towards the UK market and the Civil Aviation Authority, who we're lucky are quite a forward-looking regulator, although with changes of government and the like, you might have a difference of direction in terms of where those regulations are going. So it's being mindful to changes in the regulation development, because although we've been flying drones for 12 years under the Civil Aviation Authority permissions, it can change very quickly on the direction, and certain other regions, such as where Matt is, there are different regulations. So we can't it's not one size fits all, and we have to understand how we can operate to what level and how that changes on time. So it's that professional understanding of those regulations, having the right insurances as well. In the UK, we're very much becoming an insurance-led industry with drones, and understanding airspace. Airspace is very key. We work in very complex environments. We work in central London a lot and capturing photogrammetry data or undertaking surveys of buildings such as government buildings. We have lots of regulated airspace, and it's understanding how you put the right permissions in place and making those operations for data capture both legal, safe, and ensuring that you're getting the right quality of data for the end user as well. So it's navigating that regulatory framework, but ensuring that everything is safe and compliant at the same time.
Thanks, Adam. And I think with all of these new emerging technologies, it brings a lot of issues around compliance. So, Ian, I'd like to move across to you. And given your experience working with startups and students, how do you think compliance and regulation serve as a barrier to innovation in surveying?
Yeah, good question, I suppose. I suppose I'd flip that really and say it's not really a barrier as such. I suppose, obviously, with talking to lots of students, lots of startups, one of their biggest fears is obviously liability in the industry. Coming into something that is a public-facing professional role, there's a lot of ability, a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and therefore, obviously, regulation compliance are fundamental to chartered surveying practices. I think there's an opportunity there to say, well, actually, you should champion compliance and qualifications and regulation. So treat it as an opportunity rather than a barrier. And I think putting the PropTech sort of side of things forward, again, it goes back to that point of having cloud-based technologies, PropTech solutions, preferably single ecosystems that can help deliver from start to finish all of those key touch points in a business. And they are extensive. If you map out the customer journey in terms of what we're supposed to demonstrate, I say I'm talking in the context of a UK-based residential sector practice dealing with pre-purchase surveys, for example. There are many different compliant touch points that you need to demonstrate. Now, software can help do that. As I say, it allows for great communication, great collaboration between team members, whether it's admin, whether it's surveyors, whether it's quoting proposals, demonstrating conflict checks, prior involvement, whether that's selling services, building proposals, terms and conditions, client payments, all of those criteria where there are lots of boxes to tick. Having a process to follow is very helpful to students and startups that are just coming at this from green eyes, really. And I think, again, what PropTech has done very well over the last decade is give people in one place a process to follow that is very safe, robust and secure. It's accessible across a business. So if you look at an admin team collaborating with a surveying team, collaborating with a consumer, all of those touch points are documented. Rhodri mentioned before about having to dip back into a quotation that you may have sent to a client from a year ago, or an audit's come in and you need to dip back into something from 6 years ago, all in one place, all cloud-based. That's critical really for any business now. Gone are the days of having multiple filing cabinets to have to sift through. If ever you get any kind of audit or member support visits from panels or from RICS, they're going to want to see that, who did what when, how did you deal with the customer, how did you demonstrate compliance with the home survey standard, for example. How did you get underneath the hood to understand that level 2 survey product was suitable for that building or that client indeed? And it's how you put those checks and balances in place. So I think it's a great time to be a student right now, because there are some brilliant systems out there that do all of this for you. So I always say to people, quality in, quality out. If you follow the process, and that process is robust and tried and tested and built from experience, then no one can ever guarantee compliance, but it'll take you very close to that finishing line. And I think cloud-based technologies and digital solutions and PropTech, so one thing as an industry should be proud of, because it's champion compliance. So I don't think it's a barrier as such. I think it's something to take seriously. It is very important, but it's not as difficult as one might think if you've got the right tools in place. I guess they are just tools at the end of the day. It is reliant on that sort of human intervention. But yes, I think probably more of an opportunity than a barrier, really. And it's just obviously giving them the best possible opportunity to do right by their customers.
And thanks, Rhodri. I'd like to hear your perspective on this. And as we see digital data collection becoming more common in surveying, I'm curious what you think on this piece. Given that there's not just one approach to this, what compliance issues or opportunities do you think that surveyors need to be aware of? And how can we ensure that they're adhering to necessary regulations whilst adopting these new methods?
So compliance and obviously regulation can cover a whole kind of variety of areas. You can look at drone requirements. It's not like, I think obviously Matt and Adam have mentioned, you could have a drone that's less than 250 grams with no camera, and the regulations are a lot less. If you add a camera, all of a sudden you need a license as a flyer, and if you add more weight, I believe, then you need to have a flying ID and stuff like that. So there's multiple I'm sure Adam's going to tell me all the regulations in great detail, but like I said, but the point being, there's not one size fits all. There's an absolute plethora of things and hoops to kind of be aware of. And then you can go in detail into GDPR and client retention of files and so on and so forth. But I think it all comes down to a mix of what Ian said in regards to putting systems in place to kind of help with compliance. But I think there's also got to be something regards to the education of these regulations and compliance. You look at governing bodies like RICS, and there's others out there. I won't mention them on this podcast, but there's a responsibility for them to inform people within the industry of not just the current regulations and compliance, but evolving compliance and regulations as well. For example, SAVA, it's a kind of an institution for residential surveying qualifications, and I hosted a webinar. They asked me to talk about how software solutions can help with compliance. There was an opportunity to kind of go in about the home survey standards and following the scope and so on and so forth. But I went down a little bit more of an indirect route and started talking about the intricacies of terms of engagements, client retention, auditing, and how software such as, the one that, the company I work for, and Ian as well, very similar in that regard, where it's almost becomes an automated process where you save all the stuff on a cloud, where all your kind of notes, where you send emails out and stuff like that's automatically saved. But also the minor details, like making sure that you've got your terms of engagement and they're all correct. So in answer to a long-winded answer to a very short question, is I think it's a combination of having safeguards in place, which you can kind of use through, solutions such as what myself and Ian can provide, but also understanding the minutiae of the regulations and how they evolve, whether that be through governing bodies or regulatory bodies that, like the likes of Matt and Adam, have two completely different sets to adhere by because of their locations. So yeah, education and processes combined, I would say.
Thanks, Rhodri. Adam?
Can I just sorry to jump in there, Aaliyah. Can I just make a comment on what Rhodri was saying, is that, and Ian, regulations, especially in the tech sector, are always reactionary rather than, proactive. So as the tech develops and as PropTech develops, the regulators, whether it's the RICS or specific regulators for certain activities, they're always going to be proactive. They're always going to be reactive to what's going on. So the opportunity, therefore, is for those who are involved in PropTech, developing it, shaping it. You get an opportunity to engage with the regulators, especially if you get in early, and how to shape those. And as RICS has that great opportunity of shaping that and engaging other regulators and stakeholders for the surveying industry, the great opportunity is that we can shape our future as the technology develops as well.
Thanks, Adam. I think it's important to touch on the adoption of digital technology and specifically looking at innovative technologies like AI. AI and digital tools are transforming the surveying process. AI can be used for data analysis and automating report writing, making work faster and more efficient. But there are still challenges to adopting technology. Many traditional surveyors struggle with the costs. There's issues around learning new systems or concerns about data security. And there's also this huge issue around inertia, this resistance to change within the industry. I think it's very important for us to talk about how surveyors are using AI and digital tools, whilst also addressing the significant obstacles that they face. Matt, I'll move across to you. Let's look at an example of a project that you've completed. Is there any specific examples where a drone has benefited the role of a building surveyor?
Yeah, I think sticking towards them preferring traditional methods is something that is an ongoing education for building surveyors and surveyors in general. So one project that comes to mind very quickly is building inspections from facade and roofs perspective. So we have a landlord that approached us about changing from traditional, which was a cherry picker with a guy taking photographs as he goes along, which is a timely and expensive process, and you're not capturing optimum data. So I convinced him at the beginning, because it was an education for him. It was new to him for what drones can actually do. So we flew the drone around 10 of his buildings, and within half a day we captured all facades and roofs, produced tenfold on the amount of photographs and data that he could have collected in his traditional method, and identified the defects using software solutions which pick up some defects very fast. So he was astounded on how quick that solution actually was, and subsequently has instructed us to come back and do that on a semi-annual basis for all of his portfolio. So it took a bit of time to get there, but once he made the leap, so to speak, he's now fully embraced the drone technology, which is great to see. I'm just trying to encourage more and more clients to do the same.
Thanks, Matt. I think there's this fear about AI taking our jobs, when really it's there to improve the way we work. And it's about automating the mundane tasks to allow us to spend time focusing on analysis and tasks that are important. So, Ian, how would you say that AI and machine learning, for example, are improving areas like report writing or compliance management? Are there specific tools that you have implemented that have made a significant difference for your clients?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, this one, and only just this past week, I don't know if anyone is interested or follows Tesla, but you'll have seen the Optimus Prime robots. That's the world we live in now, and looking at AI and machine learning, the pace at which this seems to have gathered momentum, it's been around for a while. It's one of those terms that's been bandied around quite a lot lately. I'm by no means an AI expert, I'll just say that first, but I am interested in it. I do take a keen interest in that from a software perspective. And the conclusion I kind of reach is that it's a bit like, the best analogy I think of is it's like having that Tesla, that Optimus Prime robot. It's having the most efficient supercomputer robot in the world, but doesn't know how to do anything. It needs training. It needs information feeding into it to understand what the framework is, what the guidance is. So yes, it can answer a question very, very quickly, and it can write something very, very quickly in the context of, say, ChatGPT. But where does that data come from? Who's sense checked that? Where is the experience, the knowledge set? And it's that human interaction at the moment that isn't as easy as people think. So I think that whilst there's a lot of talk about it, I think it's actual logical implementation, certainly from putting my residential surveyor practical hat on. How do we adopt AI and chatbots and things like that into our day-to-day lives? Well, I think we're already doing it in the sense of hardware. You know, the chaps, Matt and Adam on the call, they're already using fantastic drone technology that has some amazing sort of, you know, self-mapping functionality and various other different things that they can do autonomously. But from a physical buildings inspection point of view, it's quite tricky. You know, I think as we look at, I think Rhodri mentioned before about these tanks that go under the subfloors, probably spraying things with spray foam and things like that. But from a diagnostic perspective, there are some brilliant tools emerging. I don't see how you will easily, yes, you could train an Optimus robot perhaps to go and inspect a building, and that future is there, I guess, at some stage. But for now, I think the practical applications for me, where they can really add value to, going back to that point about these are just tools, we must not forget that software, hardware, AI for that matter, they are there to support as a tool. You know, they're there to help the surveyor do their job. There's lots of ways that can happen. If you look at, as I say, ChatGPT, that can help reword phrases. You know, what about surveyors that have dyslexia, for example? There are lots of them out there. So there are some really good things we can do with this AI technology, but I think got to have caution. You've got to be mindful of how you adapt and how you use it. And I believe RICS are working on some guidance on AI, which is going to be critical going forward. But yeah, from a report writing perspective, from a sense check, I think from an audit and compliance tool perspective, there's bots out there that you can train to do anything you want. There's not too stretch of imagination to think, well, there's a compliance bot that the RICS could create to feed in a question. It will give you a very robust answer because it's based on the home survey standard. So feed that information in, teach it to understand what the home survey standard means and the supplementary guidance notes, those that are mandatory, those that are guidance, understand what that means, train it the examples, and it can give you a very sensible answer. How we use that in practice, where the liability sits, whether we should, just because we can, all of those kind of things come into play. But there's no doubt it can make our lives that bit easier. Who'd have said 10 years ago we'd have been flying drones, driving tanks under subfloors, thermally scanning buildings, 4D model? Yeah, obviously Adam and Matt, you were probably saying that 20 odd years ago, and I'm sure you would have been. But no, I think as a wider surveying community, I think the biggest takeaway seems to be we're so scared of adopting new technologies. That's the feedback I get from engaging with a lot of firms, that actually this isn't to be afraid of. This is something that can help you. This is something that can give you an efficiency, a time saving, a cost saving, whatever your agenda is, it can bring some benefits to you, which only has to be a great thing for consumers in the real world we live in. So AI is going to be a big part of that. How, where, and why, don't know. The possibilities are endless, but it's quite exciting.
Thanks, Ian. Though these technologies do offer huge benefits, I'm going to continue on that topic of proceeding with caution. And Roger, you mentioned about these drones or robots that can detect damp under the floor. What do you see some of the main challenges in ensuring that data collected through digital tools is as reliable as manual inspections? And how can surveyors build trust in these digital solutions while still managing the high standard expected in our industry?
I think confidence is probably one of the hardest things to earn. You look at the kind of surveying industry as a whole, and you've got a spectrum of age ranges, and there's a large amount of surveyors towards the one side of it, which are experienced 25, 30, 40 years experienced surveyors, and then you've got a whole new host of surveyors coming through these new kind of training avenues and such and qualifying, and they've got a completely different grasp of technology. Some people have grown up with it, and it's part parcel. I mean, you want to see me on Facebook compared to my son on Facebook. He doesn't even have to look at his phone and he can write a blimmin' status, whereas I've got my phone about an inch away from my face. But the adoption of technology is very much based around that kind of age category. But the biggest challenge, I mean, you look at software solutions and stuff like that. Do you design a software to do the job, or do you basically do the job around the software? So I'm not necessarily, I'm kind of probably find myself in the middle of that category. So when we were looking at designing a solution, we wanted to gain people's confidence by making sure we don't change what they do. So you might have Matt, who is 20, not Matt, but a guy called Matt who is 25 and a guy called Dave who is 60. They will have different experiences, a different approach to how they complete their kind of day-to-day processes. So you need to kind of design or build something that will be able to interact with other technologies such as drones and mini tanks or whatever it is you want to do, damp meters. But you need to be able to enable the surveyor to do it his way. So I think something designed, but if you get someone who is actually a surveyor to help drive these processes, they'll have a better understanding of the requirements. It's kind of a hard concept to get across, but you almost want to use the tech to complete your process rather than change your process to suit the tech, I think is the best way of explaining it.
Thanks, Rhodri. Ian?
Yeah, just a very quick, I agree with that. I think the only other add-on I'd add to that is flexibility. I think Rhodri touched on there. What's really important with all of this, whether it's AI, drones, digital data capture with mobile phones, etc., is it's got to be super flexible. If we're to get the masses to adopt change and to embrace digital technology, it's baby steps. I think it's got to be something that they can transition in baby steps. We've worked with a lot of people that have gone from some amazing stories have gone from pen and paper, very old school, and there's nothing wrong with that, to doing everything digitally. That's a big transition for a lot of people. So I think the point mentioned before about flexibility, trying to make sure that you can do it your way. There's a system there to help you follow it, but you can dip in and out of that system however you choose. There's no right or wrong way here. The end destination is what's important. But yeah, having a robust, we won't make you do it a certain way, is a real barrier to break down, so that actually it's not so scary, because I can still do some of the things I like to do, like the way I take my photos, for example. You'd be surprised how routine some people are, and Roger's smiling because he will get it, but it's just trying to do it in a positive way and a supportive way, so it's less scary. And I think that's what PropTech's all about, isn't it? It's just trying to do it in a flexible way so that we all think, actually, why aren't we doing this? This is quite exciting and it can help me, but I'm not going outside my comfort zone. So yeah, I'd add that as well.
Thanks. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, Ian said earlier, and he's quite right, is that AI is a tool. You know, it's there to augment what we're doing and make it better, and increase that time that isn't spent on small tasks. You know, we've got to keep that human in the link, and it leads into that what Ian and Roger are saying about the flexibility and, you know, the use cases and the users themselves. You know, it's an ever-changing landscape, and it's growing, and the information within that AI is able to digest for us and give us answers for, so such as within drones and thermal surveying. You know, you can look at data analysis and pattern recognition, even some automated flight optimizations and the like when collecting photogrammetry data. But what you've got to remember is, with that human in a link, you need to verify the data itself. You know, AI is very good at producing some really good results, but it's also good at producing some really false results as well. So it goes back to traditional things of measure once, measure twice, measure again. You know, you need to be looking at the data and verifying that data by having that knowledgeable human in the link and understanding with the data. I mean, I actually met up with a friend of mine the other night who is an AI expert, and he introduced me to a new concept of RAG, which is, I wrote this down because I can never remember it, retrieval augmented generation. So that's a new AI term that I hadn't heard of. And it's looking at what data you need and using decision trees rather than necessarily large language models, things like that. So it's looking at how the AI tools are being used, how they're growing, and what the accuracy is. I mean, there's a larger conversation which we can't have right now, but happy to have with anyone, around automation versus autonomy. It's like, at what point is that AI bot or that machine making decisions for itself? And if it is, or if it's not, if it is actually just advanced automation, where does the liability use? Is it in the user? Is it the person that wrote that model? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the regulator because they've put in place certain restrictions or, you know, use cases for that AI? You know, so it's opening up what we can do and how we can do it, and the speed at which we can do things and the level that it can be undertaken, but understand that we still need those knowledgeable humans in the link who understand how to use the data, what the data is used for, why we're using it, and when we're using it. The same with and again, the tools on the same questions.
Yeah, I think that ties us quite nicely onto our final topic. So as surveying becomes more digital, the skills needed for the job are changing. While traditional surveyors relied on hands-on measurements and observations, today most surveyors need to know how to operate drones, use software, and manage digital data. Balancing these new technical skills with the traditional ones is key to staying competitive. So let's take a look at what skills are becoming essential and how professionals can prepare to stay competitive. So Matt, I'll start off with you. For a traditional surveyor looking to embrace technology, where would you suggest they start?
Yeah, well, when I started, I went down a rabbit hole of drones. That's where I started and ended up on mobile and terrestrial scanning. But if I was starting today, I think the easiest way is to consume content, whether it be a podcast, or video content on YouTube. There's so much of it out there now on big advancements in the surveying industry. The other easiest way would be experts in your local network. Reach out to them, grab a coffee, ask for a demo of what they do, and then start asking questions. Be curious. Follow other prop techs and contacts on LinkedIn. Reach out to people like myself, Adam and Ian and Rhodri here. Just start being inquisitive. I think that's the first place to start. And then there are so many small niches in prop tech and contech. It's really where you want to go with it and what you're interested in. Upskilling in itself is it depends on which niche you want to go down. But upskilling is definitely important in this industry. You know, as the guys have touched on before, pen and paper was how we started, then photographs, video content. Now we're using robots and flying drones. So not everyone's at that level, and not everyone needs to be at that level, frankly. They can use the experts.
And thanks, Rhodri. With your experience of being a building surveyor with boots on the ground, at what point do you think that these digital technologies will be almost mandatory rather than providing that additional detail? And what new skills will be essential for future surveyors to develop when this does happen?
I think to say something would be mandatory, the home survey standards are being reviewed, and there's going to be a whole load of requirements and a greater scope. But I think that's, a lot of that focus is actually going to be on like the energy efficiency of houses and stuff like that. In order to give information and the correct guidance on areas like that, it's all about getting data. So, I mean, you can read surveys, and there, some guy goes with a binocular to look at the roof coverings. There'll be a limitation stating the roof coverings were inspected from ground level through use of binocular, and it gives them a certain amount of flexibility in regards to should there be a discrepancy or should something be later found for further investigations. However, with the new technologies, what a surveyor is basically provided with is just an absolute catalogue of data, but the skill that they'll need the most is how they can interpret that data and produce something for the client that will make sense. You can take UV ratings and thermal imageries and damp meter readings, but if you give a client a floor plan with escape loss and different colors and conductivity meter readings, it might mean nothing to them. So it's how the surveyor can essentially convert what they've captured with all the data, with their drone photos, with their damp meter readings, with a little tank, or the air pressure of a room and heat loss and stuff like that, and how they can present it in a kind of a format in which their client can understand. And I think that's the biggest kind of new skill that people will have to adopt. Yes, people can embrace the technology and learn to fly a drone, and there can be solutions, such as what me and Ian's companies can provide, whereby we can integrate these different technologies. But at the end of the day, all it does is it gives a surveyor data. There are specialists out there that can do the drone flying for them, if needs be. So, get a business card of Adam. So, but effectively, we should never really replace the skills. Obviously, we've mentioned this as a surveyor, because effectively you capture the data, and that will give you the cause. But ultimately, the job of surveyor is not to note a load of defects. It's to talk about the symptoms of that, but also tell you what the cause is. And I think, the biggest skill is using that data that people will get in abundance now, as opposed to a whole list of limitations. Couldn't see the subfloor void. It might be damp. Get a further investigation. There's moisture in the walls. It could be rising damp. Get a further investigation. All of a sudden, as the technologies emerge, there'll be more specific answers to the different sections throughout a residential survey, for example. And it's just being able to translate that in plain English to the person that's paid you a decent amount of money to know the most they possibly can about the house they might buy.
Thanks, Rhodri. Ian, I'm curious to understand, how do you advise surveyors to balance expanding their technical expertise whilst also maintaining their traditional surveying skills? How do they find that balance, and what's the right way to go about it?
Yeah, good question, really. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no easy option. I think the important thing is continual professional development. It's having that open mind to look at new ideas, embrace the technology, but to constantly question. I think what surveyors are good at is constantly looking for something. They've got very inquisitive minds. They're constantly looking to become more efficient, add value to their clients and what they deliver in terms of their reports. I think I'd encourage surveyors to just reach out, have conversations with people like Adam and Matt about drones, myself, Rhodri, about software, about how you can deliver those changes without it being something to be scared of. It can save you a lot of time, effort, money at the end of the day. So from my point of view, it's just about having that, I guess, that will to want to look at stuff and move forward with something new. I think, constantly learning is no bad thing. So constantly looking to see how you can adopt AI into practices and sense check what you do and support what you do. There's never going to be a time when it replaces you entirely. Maybe there will, but beyond my lifetime, not that old, but it's not too far of a stretch to understand that you can see where those robots are going to come into play in a lot of these roles. But we're always going to need that human touch, and that's customers will need it. Compliance dictates it, and I think that liability is a big question to consider as well. So yeah, I think all I would say is I'd just encourage them to network, to talk to peers, colleagues, go to networking events, do as much training, upskilling, continue your CPD, especially for students and startups. It's really important that you spend a lot of time investing in yourself to understand and upskill. Matt with his drones, you go down rabbit holes, and that's an amazing thing. But there's so many to go down. There's so much new technology. It's brilliant.
Thanks. And last but not least, Adam, what would you say are the key skills surveyors should focus on to ensure that they can fully leverage tools like drones, thermal imaging, and AI?
I think it's been touched on by the other guys, but there's 3 C's that, as professionals and looking at tech, that we really should be looking at. Is CPD, that continuous professional development, understanding what's there, understanding and learning from people who are knowledgeable. So you need to ensure the veracity of that information you're getting, and the understanding what the source is and the limitations of that data, because there's a lot of false information out there as well. Sometimes the drones, we have a new client who says, "Oh, I thought you couldn't fly that drone in central London," and actually that's one of the core things that we do, is work in complex environments. So we're able to provide the information on how we can fly there, why we can fly there, and we provide that through CPD. And there's lots of CPD, especially through RICS, with this webinar and other sources, are providing those verified sources of data from professionals who understand what they're doing. So CPD is the first one, and then collaboration with tech companies and peer learning. So people who've actually, like everyone on this webinar, who've been working in those spaces and understand those spaces, can work with other professionals to provide those services or help develop those services along the line. And then it's curiosity. If you're not curious about what these solutions, whether they're physical or software solutions, do, then you're not going to be able to engage with them and not be able to use them to their best ability. So being curious of what's out there and doing some self-led exploration of these things, especially software or hardware where you're not using it in a regulated space or a space that could become dangerous. Testing things, maybe breaking them and then rebuilding them. It builds your experience within that. Same with the AI tools. Start small. Use the chatbot like ChatGPT or others. Try it for that letter writing. Put in a document. Say, rewrite this for me with a certain voice or something like that. And by being curious, you build your skills with those technologies, and by engaging with professionals who've been doing it for a long time, like all of us, you can find someone who actually has the knowledge to give you the right information. And by doing the CPD, especially whereby it's provided by sources you can rely on, such as the RICS, then you're really going to be able to grasp those opportunities, that tech, and ensure that you're doing it in the right way. And that's of a benefit to you professionally.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway there for me is that curiosity, that that ability to be inquisitive and be open to adopting new technology. So thanks for that, Adam and Ian. And thank you all for being here today to discuss the future of building surveying. In this session, we've explored how emerging technologies and AI are reshaping our profession and the importance of adapting to regulations and developing new skills. While there are challenges ahead that we've mentioned today, the opportunities for growth and innovation are significant. And I appreciate all of your insights and I look forward to seeing how the industry evolves in the years to come. So thank you to all of our panelists, and I look forward to speaking about this topic in the future.